I've clicked onto the Global Tropical RV for November the 16th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, the tropics pasture are mine alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to your local weather office, local emergency management, local tropical cyclone warning center. So we've got three systems to talk about. We've got potential tropical cyclone 22 off the coastline of Central America in the Caribbean. I'm going to talk about that first, but then after that, we're going to talk about Tropical Cyclone 7 in the North Indian Ocean. Just going to check if it has a name. I don't think it does. No, it does not, from what I can see. It's just Tropical Cyclone 7 from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. And then finally, we're going to go to the West Pacific where we have Invest 97W to talk about, as that system could develop as it comes to the Mariana Islands later this week into this weekend. And it could develop after that into next week, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So we're going to start off with potential tropical cyclone 22, and just a reminder of what a potential tropical cyclone is. It is a system that has a chance to develop into a tropical cyclone over the coming days and is likely to bring tropical storm or hurricane conditions to any land areas over the next 36 to 48 hours. In this case, it is tropical storm conditions. Don't worry, we're not talking about a potential hurricane here. We're talking about a tropical storm, and this is, of course, mid-November, so this is expected to have, a tropical storm, not a hurricane coming up here. But the threat here is still, I'd say, fairly significant for potential of tropical storm conditions, and including strong tropical storm force winds, potentially in excess of 40 to 45 miles per hour. Maybe higher than that. But the main threat here is rainfall. You can see just how much, if I go to the zoomed out true color view, just how much moisture is being pulled up north here by the upper trough over the Gulf of Mexico. And I'll show you this on a 200 millibar flow chart from the GFS, but you can see we have a lot of cloud elements being streamed way out of the deep tropics. So all this deep tropical moisture is coming up, and we have a lot of rainfall spreading over the mountainous terrain of the Greater Antilles. But the actual system center of what we're tracking, I'll go back to the zoomed in view, is actually here off the coastline of Central America. We're not looking here. There is some, I guess, mid-level spin here in the clouds southwest of Jamaica, but that's not the system here. That's not 22L. This system down here is. And you can tell by looking at some of the recon data that we got earlier today, you can see that they found this general broad and weak area of low pressure underneath this light to moderate convection off the coastline of Central America. So the system is fairly weak still. It has some work to do, but we at least have an area of low pressure developed, and we have some convection near it. And conditions are fairly favorable for this system. You can see on the water vapor loop, we have good divergence aloft, and this will only get better as the upper trough over the Gulf of Mexico continues to move east. And I can show you this in the 200 millibar plot from the GFS. Here is the trough over the Gulf Coast. It stretches down all the way into Mexico, and you can see all of this outflow moving north, or I guess this large jet streak. Here's the outflow from the actual system down here, but you can see it's moving to meet all the accelerated winds over Cuba, Florida, and the Bahamas, and this environment is going to favor the system in its potential development. Now, development overall is likely, but we're not expecting any significant development out of this. The National Hurricane Center is expecting the system to move pretty quickly, and it looks like it will, as this trough is more likely now to pick the system up. Look just how deep it goes down here. With our system here, it's already starting to kick the system northeast. So unlike the scenario that I talked about that was still potential about 3 days ago where it could have potentially gotten missed by the trough, that scenario, I'd say it's completely gone away now, and the system will be picked up by the trough, and it will move pretty quickly northeast. So this system really won't have too much of an opportunity to intensify. That's good news. However, unfortunately, this trough is bringing up a lot of moisture like I showed you on satellite. And unfortunately, we are still looking at a lot of rainfall across mountainous terrain. And it's very dangerous, as we've seen several times, as you can easily get a lot of mudslides from that. Now, here's the current National Hurricane Center forecast cone. You can see that general quick movement, particularly as we get to the weekend. You can see fairly slow movement to start, but starting tomorrow afternoon, we start to see the system accelerate away, but you can see tropical storm watches in place from Jamaica into Cuba, Eastern Cuba, that is, and Haiti. The Dominican Republic is not included in any of these tropical storm watches. The system will likely remain far enough west that you don't have to deal with any tropical storm force winds, but keep in mind, heavy rainfall will still spread over the entire island of Hispaniola, and you can see tropical storm watches in place as well for the Turks and Caicos, and I believe portions, maybe this far southeastern Bahamas there. And I'd imagine as the system develops and strengthens, we'll likely get tropical storm warnings in place. But tropical storm force winds are not the only threat here, as I mentioned. Here's the relative humidity plot from the GFS. You can see all this deep tropical moisture being pulled up. You can also see this, as I talked about earlier, with the clouds being pulled up north, and this will likely bring a lot of rainfall to the region. And we have a new graphic from the Weather Prediction Center. This is brand new. I think this is the first tropical cyclone that they've put this out for. Very good graphic, and it does very good at giving you the information that you need for potential rainfall. So you can see as the system tracks through the greater Antilles, we could see very significant rainfall here of 4 to 6 inches widespread over Jamaica, Cuba, into portions of southern Hispaniola here, and even into the Turks and Caicos. That's about 100 to 150 millimeters of rainfall as well. But you can see the most significant rainfall here being in eastern Cuba and eastern Jamaica, and even portions of western Haiti, where we have some regions of 8 to 12 inches. That's 200 to 300 millimeters, where they're noting the potential of over a foot of rain in eastern Jamaica and over 10 inches of rain in western Haiti. And you can see the translations of that to millimeters here on the right side on this plot. Very good graphic. I applaud those at the Weather Prediction Center who worked on this. Very good graphic, and this is very good to have, as up till now we really haven't had graphics to show the rainfall other than model guidance, which that can differ quite a lot between different models. But if you want to find this graphic, as it will be updated through each advisory cycle, go to nhc.noaa.gov. I'll leave that link at the top of the description, and you can find this. In fact, I'll just go to the website to show you. If you go to the website and scroll down to Potential Tropical Cyclone 22, they have all the graphics here, and it should just say rainfall potential, and you can click on that, and you can find it there. And this will give you all the information you need for potential rainfall information. All right, we're now going to move to the North Indian Ocean as we have Tropical Cyclone 7 here in the northern Bay of Bengal. Here's the coastline of Bangladesh. Here's the coastline of India. And this system is very sheared right now. You can see a lot of cloud elements streaming north towards the system. And the low-level center, it's hard to pick out, but it's likely about there, with the center right about there. So it is underneath some of the convection, but right now it's not too well organized, and I gotta say, we are lucky with Tropical Cyclone 7 right now. This is the water vapor loop, and there is that well-advertised jet streak that we had depicted on model guidance last week over the region, and fortunately, this system is not too well developed. If it was well developed, we could have potentially been looking at something rapidly intensifying, but we got very lucky here. The system is sheared, and the main threat here really is rainfall as the system moves north. The system is not really likely to intensify too much. It may intensify some, as the system does have deep convection going, as you can clearly see on the satellite, but we're not expecting rapid intensification here, and that's very good news. And I'm glad to see that we don't have a jet interaction actually verifying here in terms of favorability. For once this year. Now, this is a GFS model, and you can see it generally coming in the next 12 to 18 hours, maybe most late about 24 hours, and you can see all the heavy rain associated with the system as it moves into Bangladesh, India, and Myanmar. And after that, the system will quickly dissipate, and that will be the end of 7B. And we don't really have any other system that I can see likely to develop. If we do have more development likely in the North Indian Ocean, I'll bring it up in future videos. But very short section on the North Indian Ocean, but we're going to move now to the West Pacific as we have Invest 97W. And this is a trough of low pressure here. You can tell by the westerly winds on the southern side and the easterly winds on the northern side, and a general trough axis like this with a lot of disorganized convection firing along that boundary. And this system over the coming days will be tracking westwards, and development is looking decent. The models have been inconsistent on exactly what time frame of development actually happens. For example, the GFS has been very over the past couple of days very consistent on showing development happening before the Mariana Islands. But now today the GFS has actually changed. Now there are some reasons of why it has changed. I'm going to go to the vorticity plot. You can see here's our general trough here within Invest 97W. You can see where it is. Here's the Mariana Islands. Here's the Philippines. And the system over the coming days is going to track towards generally the southern chain of the islands. So towards Guam and islands like that. And you can see as it comes through the islands on the GFS, it is not too well organized. But if we go back in prior runs, we actually had a full-blown tropical cyclone coming through here on the model. So the GFS is now becoming a bit more weak. And this is a bit more in line with the European. If I go here to the 850 millibar plot, you can see as the system is coming through the Mariana Islands, it too is not a tropical cyclone. And the European has been more consistent on this idea. Now, something that may be causing this is there is some shear as it does pass through the islands. Here's a sounding from the GFS. You can see we have generally light winds in the low levels, but we have some stronger winds aloft, and this may be tilting the structure with height. Remember I talked about several days ago with 96W, I can't remember if this was 96W or 95W, what was 17W here east of the Philippines. We talked about a few days ago how that system could have been dealing with some tilt with its shear, and that's generally a less favorable scenario for a tropical cyclone, especially when you're trying to get one to develop. If you want one to develop, you want it to be stacked in general. And with this shear, you can get the system to be overall tilted with height. And that may be one of the reasons why the GFS is now turning towards the European and not showing too much development with this in the short term. Now, as we get past the Mariana Islands, as we get into early next week, the system will continue to track west. There is a ridge of high pressure here over the subtropical West Pacific, and this will begin to turn the storm north east of the Japanese islands. So we're not expecting the system to come all the way west into the islands. We're expecting the system to recurve. And by this time, we will have a jet over Japan, and we may see by then some more development. I could show you that better on the GFS as it does go further out than the European. You could see by early next week, we have a formed tropical cyclone. And the reason being, if we look at the 200 millibar flow, we have this strong jet streak over and east of Japan, and this is setting up a fairly favorable environment, and this may allow further development. But models have been a bit inconsistent on this idea as well. The European remains very weak with this. It remains to be seen if we'll get any development with this system at all. But it's something to watch, and regardless of development, there will likely be some heavy rainfall brought to the Mariana Islands, particularly the southern part of the chain, as the system comes through, as it will have some deep tropical moisture to work with, as it is still fairly far south in the West Pacific. But other than that, not really too much else going on in the tropics. Cyclone Mal has I believe, turned into a non-tropical cyclone, so we're not going to really discuss that. It passed through Fiji a couple days ago. That did get to Category 3, which was certainly interesting to see. But other than that, we're not really seeing too many signs of significant tropical cyclone development. So it looks like over the next several days, we're fairly quiet here across the world, which we'll certainly take this time of year. And really, after the whole year of tropical cyclones that we've had across the world. But stay safe in all the areas ahead of the tropical cyclones that I mentioned, ahead of PTC 22. Apologies for these loading frames here. But stay safe in the greater Antilles as well as potential tropical cyclone 22 moves through, and in Bangladesh, in India, and Myanmar as potential tropical cyclone 7. I'm getting these designations confused. Tropical cyclone 7 comes north and brings some of its heavy rain northwards. I'll leave you all with the rainfall graphics since the satellite imagery is not working, but I'll leave links to all the centers like the National Hurricane Center and some local weather offices if I can find them in the greater Antilles as well at the top of the description, and the Indian Meteorological Department as well for information on 7B. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.